Okay, let's go ahead and say our opening prayers though. Let's do also what we did last time. Say the first verse of these Tibetan ones in English, and then do the other two verses in the Tibetan with the song. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the positive potential I create by listening to teachings and the other paramitas, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. Sangye chadang sogi choknam la, jangchu bardu dakni kyapsuchi, dagi jinso gipe sonam ki, drola penjir sangye druparsho. Sangye chadang sogi choknam la, jangchu bardu dagni gyapsuchi, dagi jinso gipe sonam ki, drola penchir sangye druparsho. The four immeasurable thoughts. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings be inseparable from the happiness that is free from suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. And then think, may I be blessed and inspired by my gurus and all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas to be able to accomplish this. Then we go to the top of the next page and the seven limb prayer. And again, just visualize the Buddha, all the Bodhisattvas, all of your spiritual teachers and mentors in the space in front of you as we say this prayer. Reverently, I prostrate with my body, speech, and mind, and present clouds of every type of offering, actual and mentally transformed. I declare all my negative actions accumulated since beginningless time, and rejoice in the merits of all holy and ordinary beings. Please remain until samsara ends and turn the wheel of dharma for sentient beings. I dedicate the merit created by myself and others to the great enlightenment. And then the mandala offering. Ramri Rablinji Nidegen Hadi Sangye Jindu Nideruaki Rokunanda Chingla Chopasho Idam Guru Ratnamandanam Yeriyatai.
I wanted to start by sharing this message from Geshe and Nima.
Oh yeah, please.
The share screen. All my spiritual programs here in Bodh Gaya at Sarah Monastery and the International Sangha Forum at Bodh Gaya, my retreats all went very well, successfully, content, and completely. With folded hands, I thank you very much for your kind financial supports without which I couldn't make them successfully and comfortably without facing any problems. I dedicate my virtues for you all to be healthy, successful in your teaching, practices, and other spiritual programs for the benefiting all sentient beings. Our monastic new academic courses begin shortly, so I will be back to Drepung Monastery next week. If you need anything from Bodh Gaya, let me know. Warm regards and best to you all. All right, just thought you'd all appreciate hearing that. And again, just in general, you know, we don't have any expenses, so we send funds to the monks. We have one donor who's targeting funds to support Lama Passang's mother in India, which is very kind. So we just thought, if you've ever given money, ever, in any amount, in any way, just consider yourself part of those donations to Geshe Nima, because we don't, you know, it just goes into one bank account and out from the same bank account, and it's all good.
You know where Lama Passang is now?
He's in Arkansas.
Oh,
Fayetteville.
Arkansas.
Lama Passang is in Arkansas,
Huh.
Fayetteville. Fayetteville?
Yeah.
That's kind of my report from Geshe Nima.
Okay,
I'm sure Brian has news about him. He'll be here teaching at the University of Minnesota next fall.
I'll be here January 2025 through probably March 2025.
January 2025, and we'll be issuing a request that he tag on some time to come
Right, so I
here.
think what will happen is he gets a month before and a month after his actual teaching time that he can travel all over the US.
Yeah,
So,
hopefully some of that will be here.
yeah. Well,
Anyway, so as I say, we're really grateful to be able to send him these. You know, it's customary to send donations to your teachers for Losar. I'm already here because I
had it on Brian.
Oh. And so, you know, we're just trying to do the customary thing, but he teaches at the monastery. He's not on a salary. It's not like Buddhism is pretty rough. It's not like, say, if you're an Episcopalian priest or a Methodist or a Catholic priest or a rabbi, you know, your congregation doesn't do a search committee and then hire you and then put you on a salary with life insurance and benefits. It's not at all like that. So he'll never have too much money, probably. And so anything we can send him, you know, helps him buy bus tickets and meals and pay for a hotel room while he's doing all this stuff. Just thought. Then there's nothing on the horizon. This is not an appeal. This is just so you know that when you do randomly send funds, it goes to these causes. End of story.
Okay,
Thank you, Christopher.
so we'll start with a quick review of the last session. We had really good conversations in the last session, but because of that, we weren't able to get to some of the stanzas from that part of the text, which I will go over. There may be 3 or 4 of them, but a quick review of what we talked about. Nagarjuna identifies that having a higher rebirth in cyclic existence is considered very fortunate for our spiritual growth, provided we recognize the value of that higher rebirth and we make use of it, you know, so that we understand that we can use that higher rebirth to get another higher rebirth and keep going on our spiritual path. We have to know the virtuous karmic causes for higher rebirth and the non-virtuous karmic causes for lower rebirth in order to be able to continue this pattern where we have something like a human rebirth, preferably a precious human rebirth, so that we can continue on our path. And we talked about the fact that understanding karma is a very obscure phenomenon, and it's only something that a very reliable being, such as the Buddha, an omniscient being, actually understands the workings of karma, and we need to rely on the Buddha to understand that, to understand what actions we need to take of our body, speech, and mind in order to continue to have higher rebirths in cyclic existence. A Buddha has completely eliminated every negative quality and has completely developed all their positive qualities to the point where they can't go any further. It is just perfect. So we can have faith in what a fully enlightened being tells us about karma, because all an enlightened being wishes for is to benefit sentient beings, is to help us. There is no ulterior motive other than that. So we can rely on the Buddha, what the Buddha tells us. And also, if we look at the teachings that are less obscure that the Buddha has given, for instance, teachings on ego self-grasping, the afflictive emotions that arise from that, desire, anger, hatred, fear, and the effects of those afflictive emotions, we can see that the Buddha is making absolute perfect sense at a level we know about. In something that's more subtly obscure, such as emptiness and dependent arising, we can, through inference and reasoning, say that the Buddha is correct about what he's talking about in terms of emptiness and interdependence and dependent arising. We can easily see that things do not actually independently self-exist. It's quite obvious when we start to look at it. And so that means if something doesn't independently self-exist, it means that it has to depend on other things for its existence. Now, it becomes more obscure when we get into how everything is conceptually and mentally designated, and that it exists only that way. That is more obscure for us, but we can still noodle that out through logic, inference, and reasoning if we have the correct teachings. But we can't continue to do this unless we have the kind of mind that we have, like a human mind, a kind of rebirth as a human where we have the space, the time, the facilities to be able to study like this. So this is why we have to go back to what we don't know about, what we don't understand is how karma actually works. So we have to rely we have to have faith and we have to have wisdom both. And so this goes to a stanza that we did not get to. So this is stanza 5 of the first chapter. Due to having faith, one relies on the practices. Due to having wisdom, one truly knows. Of these two, wisdom is the chief, faith is its prerequisite. If we don't have faith, we won't practice the very first scope of the Mahayana path. And the very first scope of the Mahayana path is to practice 10 virtuous actions of body, speech, and mind, and to avoid 10 non-virtuous actions of body, speech, and mind. And by so doing, that will guarantee that we will have a higher rebirth in cyclic existence. But because we don't understand how karma works, sometimes, I know the first time I read these 10 virtuous actions and 10 non-virtuous actions, I said, oh, yeah, I know about that. What's the big deal? That's not any news. Big mistake. It is news when you actually get into it. There's things we do not understand behind all of this, and which is why Buddha gave these teachings. So we should not think that this is something we want to get onto the good stuff. I mean, I don't want to do the virtuous and non-virtuous stuff. Tell me about emptiness. It's a mistake, because we will never have a direct realization of emptiness unless we can have higher rebirths in cyclic existence. And that may take several higher rebirths after the one we have now. We don't know. So in order to get that higher rebirth, we have to follow what the Buddha is teaching in terms of karma, the causes for those higher rebirths and the causes that will create a lower rebirth. So of these two, of faith and wisdom, wisdom is the chief thing. Wisdom is the thing that's actually going to get us liberated from cyclic existence, and it's going to bring us all the way to enlightenment for the benefit of all beings. However, without faith, we're not going to get a higher rebirth. We're not going to understand how to ensure a higher rebirth in cyclic existence, and that's what we need in order to develop this realization of wisdom. So faith then becomes a prerequisite. Even though it's not the chief important thing, it's prerequisite to getting a higher rebirth. Is that clear? Okay. Now we go into something which we had not talked about. And this is the 4 principal aspects of the karma, which Nagarjuna talks about here. So to have faith in the law of karma and karmic causes and effects, it begins with understanding what are called the 4 principal aspects of karma. And here's the first one. Happiness always comes from virtue, never from non-virtue. So think about it. When we lie, steal, cheat, lie, steal, cheat, get angry with others, or manipulate to get what we want, we may temporarily get the thing that our grasping wants, but in the long run, and maybe not so long, those kinds of activities will always bring a result that is not beneficial, a result that actually doesn't contribute to our own happiness or others' happiness. So non-virtuous actions are always going to result in a non-virtuous effect. Virtuous actions such as loving kindness, compassion, using speech that includes everyone, that is not exclusive, being truthful in your speech in a very kind way, never intending harm in your mind, never intending harm. All of these kinds of actions are going to bring about results that are similar. They're going to be virtuous results. So that's the first thing. Happiness always comes from virtue, never non-virtue, and suffering always comes from non-virtue, never virtue. Here's the second one. A small action can bring large results in the same way that a tiny seed can grow into a huge tree. Now, we can take examples of this in our own lives. I can think for myself and others I know. Sometimes just a few poorly chosen words with another being, another individual, can sever that relationship for the remainder of this lifetime. It can completely undo any of the good qualities and good relational factors that we're building up with this other person. When we say just the wrong kind of thing, the kind of thing that they're going to be taking it the wrong way. It is kind of an attack on that person, and it can break apart families. I've seen it happen. I've seen it happen in our extended family. A situation like this where somebody felt like they just needed to let the other person or the other party know exactly what was going on. So in a way, they thought they were telling the truth, but they were telling the truth only from their point of view. And so it completely broke apart the family relationship. And that is very, very destructive. So it goes back to this second factor, the second principal aspects of karma. A small action can bring large results in the same way that a tiny seed can grow into a huge tree. And the opposite, of a small action that is quite positive can bring huge benefit. You never know how far that can go. For instance, say Geshe Nima has taken under his wing a young monk. I think he's maybe like 7 now. And we are, giving just small donations to the monk on a regular basis. But you don't know how far that will go, how much benefit that may bring about, what this young monk, what he will grow into and become, and the benefit that he may be to the world. And that's just a very small thing that you can do. That's a virtuous action.
I was thinking just saving the life of an ant is kind of along those lines.
Saving the life of any being, actually. That takes a lot of, we have to think about that a lot. Yeah, yeah. All right, let's go to the third one. If we don't create the cause, we won't experience the result. Simple. If we don't create the negative cause, we're not going to experience the negative result or the non-virtuous result. If we create the virtuous cause, we'll experience the virtuous result. Sometimes it's just almost automatic, almost instantaneous. You help save the life of an animal that's, say, out in the yard. Immediately you feel good about this. There's such an immediate connection between the action and the result that you are experiencing the benefit of it already. But sometimes it could take time. Okay, now here's the fourth one. Karmic seeds do not get lost, and unless we stop their ability to take root and grow or destroy them, they will eventually ripen into their effects. For our own personal experience, this goes back to the idea or the concept or the reality that we have a mental continuum. And on that mental continuum are all the imprints, the strong imprints of actions that we've taken throughout our entire previous existence from beginningless time. So the stronger the imprint of that action, the stronger the effect that is going to have, and it will eventually, the action will eventually ripen as an effect within you. I don't know what a better way to talk about that. Let me read it again. Unless we stop their ability to take root and grow or destroy them, they will eventually ripen into their effects. So we can actually, like I said before, say you had a good relationship going on with somebody, a friend or a family member, and there's a growing good karmic imprints going between the two of you, right? But something occurs and you say something to them that completely destroys the seed, that growth, that karmic seed that was developing into something that was going to be quite good. This happens in relationships frequently. You're basically destroying the positive karma of that by that one action that can just completely uproot it. And then that has to be then undone and fixed. And the same with you can do the same with a negative imprint or a negative action. You can take steps. You can take steps to undo that as well. But that's going to require purification. In the case of a family member or a friend like that, there would have to be some kind of dialogue where you made a reconciliation and said, I made a mistake. I was wrong in my view. I was wrong in what I said and the way I said it. I apologize. And that can help then bring that karma back, and you can grow that back into virtuous, you create virtuous seeds. But I'm talking about our mental continuum. We have the stronger the imprints on our continuum, good or not good, the more habitual they feel to us, the more innate they feel to us. They feel like this is just the way I am. This is just the way I feel. So this can require a lot of work to sort of uproot the non-virtuous imprints so that they know that they will not ripen into their non-virtuous effects, and to cultivate the virtuous imprints that are on our mental continuum so they will ripen into a very, very positive effect. So this is what that fourth one is talking about. So just to review, the four principal aspects of karma: 1, Happiness always comes from virtue, never non-virtue. And suffering always comes from non-virtue, never virtue. 2, a small action can bring large results in the same way that a tiny seed can grow into a huge tree. 3, if we don't create the cause, we won't experience the result. And 4, karmic seeds do not get lost. And unless we stop their ability to take root and grow or destroy them, they will eventually ripen into their effects. So when we have faith in the law of karma that the Buddha teaches us, then we will actually engage in virtuous actions, and we will take practices, or we will assume practices that work to uproot the negative imprints, the negative karmic seeds.
So, did Nagarjuna say this last fourth one?
Yeah, he did.
That's the exact wording he used?
Those are the 4, yeah.
The English,
Mhm.
can you, I mean,
Well, no, well, this is from the commentary.
Yeah.
The commentary. Yeah.
So I guess in thinking about this fourth one, you have a positive karmic action. And the language suggests you can destroy that with a negative karmic action. Versus you have a positive karmic action and you have a negative karmic action, both exist, and it's the ultimate, it's the number of positive versus negative karmic actions that somehow create whatever balance there is in your karmic imprint going through multiple lifetimes.
Mhm.
So it's a bit of a subtle distinction in my mind where you're not destroying a positive karmic instinct, you just are generating more negative karmic action.
Right, and it can a negative karmic action can have a detrimental effect on some of the positive karma, and which is why it needs to be, we need to recognize what the negative actions are.
I
And
guess my
basically
question is,
uproot
how?
the explanation I gave, just like in a relationship in a family, where you actually have a you're cultivating a kind of a good relationship, but something gets said that crosses some kind of line and creates this rift, which is very difficult to bring back together. It takes a lot of work. And that's an example of something like that.
the way I heard it, for what it's worth, was I was thinking that Nagarjuna, well, that the point in had to do with if you find that you have engaged in negative actions, that you should apply what they call an antidote
Mhm.
to quote unquote uproot it.
Right.
And you can read a lot about, so they use the term purification or applying the antidote or whatever, but if you take it back to if you don't concretize what we're talking about here, so when you create a negative action, you're basically creating an energetic bundle that will ripen as a case of a negative, that will ripen as a negative consequence to you. So what you're doing is, with your consciousness, you're taking your consciousness and engaging in thinking, let's just say, that will depotentiate that negative tornado that you set into motion. So you're sort of energetically, through mantras, through good deeds, through positive things, with the intent of depotentiating again the negative vortex that you created with the negative action. Just if you take it to me, if you take it to an energetic level, it makes more sense than if you think of it in a concretized way. Because ultimately that's what we are.
Problem is, we do think in concretized ways, and so the way the Buddha explained initially is we need to stop the negative actions.
Well, yes, of course.
And he described what those
But
are.
we're talking about one step further. You've created the negative actions, so how do you uproot the seed?
Right, there is an energetic way.
Yeah,
to uproot
so I
them.
mean, when Brian said how, I was thinking, well, yeah, so how?
That's
do
what
you-
we're going, that's what the next part is about, but
Awesome.
we're
Okay,
we're
can you just,
doing a review.
can you like in just a couple of words, touch on the four again, the four aspects of karma? Just in a word or two.
Okay, happiness also always comes from virtue, never from non-virtue. Suffering always comes from non-virtue, never virtue. Okay. Second one, a small action can bring a large result in the same way that a tiny seed can create a huge tree. The third one is if we don't create the cause, we will not experience the effect. And the fourth one is karmic seeds don't get lost. And unless we destroy them or uproot them or depotentiate them, like you said, positive or negative, their results will eventually ripen. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd ever heard that before, that particular
That
set of
particular-
four things. That was new to me,
Yeah, it's
presented in that way.
presented in that way, yeah. Now we're getting to what are the principal and the secondary causes of liberation. And so there are two causes for higher rebirth and liberation, faith and wisdom, which is what we talked about. The wisdom realizing emptiness is the chief principal cause, and the faith in karma and its effects is a prerequisite to that. Prerequisite to getting higher rebirths. If we don't have higher rebirths, we're not going to have a direct realization of emptiness. It won't happen as an ant, in other words. It's going to happen as a human being or higher. Faith is the cause for ethical conduct, which leads to higher rebirth, such as human. Higher rebirth is the basis for generating the wisdom realizing emptiness, which in turn is the direct cause for what Nagarjuna calls the definite goodness of liberation and enlightenment. So even though faith is a secondary cause for liberation, it is essential and it cannot be overlooked. The faith in what the Buddha is telling us about karma, it's essential and it can't be overlooked. Got a question? You're sighing.
No, I'm struggling with faith versus logic.
Remember, their definition of faith is learn about something, check it out, experience it, test it, analyze it, and once you've done that and used your logic, then it's appropriate to have faith. That's their definition of faith.
Go ahead.
They do not have blind faith.
Go ahead with your question, though.
Well, that sounds to me like logic, not faith.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I was.
But there is logic. But what's your question?
Well, you're saying you have to have faith. And I guess what I'm hearing is you have to have faith that some of these things that Nagarjuna says and Buddha says are true without truly understanding why they're true, which would be faith, versus using your logic to figure out why they're true or not true, and then accepting them as fact or not fact, which I don't consider faith.
Right.
So
this goes back to what we were talking about earlier, last time and today also, is that what Nagarjuna is saying, what the Buddha is saying, is that a knowledge of karma is so, an understanding of karma and it's the huge web of what karma is so obscure that we can't, at the present level that we're at, the present level of our mind and the present level of our comprehension, actually understand all the workings of why karma is and how it and what makes it function. The only one who can do that is an omniscient being, and an omniscient being is a Buddha, an enlightened being. So where the faith comes in is that we sort of look at the teachings that the Buddha has given us, that we can see logically and rationally and reasonably, these actually make sense to me. I understand what the Buddha is saying. I talked about afflictive emotions and how the ego works and all that. We can see that makes sense. Then you talk about the slightly obscure things like dependent arising and emptiness, being things are empty of inherent independent self-existence. We can logically, when we look at that, we can see, yeah, the Buddha's right, he's making sense. I've never really thought about it that way. I just took it for granted that things existed independently the way they appeared. But when I actually think about it, I can see that that is only slightly obscure to me. I can figure out, no, it's what the Buddha is saying is correct. So then you go at the what the definition of a Buddha is. It's somebody who has removed all of their non-virtuous qualities, completely uprooted them, and grown all of their virtuous and positive qualities to their highest capacity for the reason of helping all sentient beings who are trapped in ignorance and suffering. So you go, there's no reason why the Buddha would lie to us. You know, by definition, what a Buddha is, there's no reason. And given the logic of its other teachings that I can evidently, obviously see, or that I can, using my logic and reasoning, say he's right about this, then I can have trust or confidence, which is another way of saying faith, confidence in what the Buddha is telling me about karma.
So is faith or is inferential logic a type of faith in the Buddhist teaching?
That would be yes. I mean, you're inferring that, yeah, in that, when you put it that way, you're inferring because the Buddha is correct in things that I actually can understand very obviously, and then through some logic and reasoning on my own, I can infer that the Buddha is not deceiving me when he's telling me about karma and the causes of, you know, virtuous causes are going to give you virtuous effects and negative causes are going to give you negative effects.
I think it's something that comes to mind is in like science experiments where another scientist has published results that UVC spectrum rays kill viruses. And so another scientist has a lab that they want to decontaminate from any viruses. So based on another scientist's findings, who they have confidence in, they will use their method with confidence to rid their lab of viruses, never having done it before, not having any direct evidence of their own, but just on the basis of reading this trusted, and others have said, yeah, it works. And so they do it and they're able to conclude through their measurement tools that, yeah, indeed, the viruses are gone. So is that faith? You could call that faith. So it's just similar.
I think a word we could use as an alternative to faith is confidence. And ultimately, like the example Kavita gave, you have to try it out yourself to see. So it's just basically taking the step to try out what the Buddha is saying to do. You know, engage in these virtuous actions, avoid these non-virtuous actions, just try it and then see how that's working for you, you know. But having the confidence that the Buddha, like a really, really good scientist, has done all his due diligence and has figured this out, and he's telling us, folks, this is what I have found, you know, and you know, please try this out. You know, based on what we already know about the Buddhist teachings, we have some confidence in what he's telling us.
I think one of the disadvantages we have here, especially, you know, so far away from high level practitioners, we don't see with our own eyes some of the results that this practice brings to some of these really, you know, seriously accomplished practitioners. And thus it feels a little bit remote to us, and we're less confident because we don't see that. And what comes to mind, yesterday I read the autobiography translation of a Tibetan teacher, a woman. And, you know, she's out there. I've seen her with my eyes briefly in 2012, but she's out there teaching and she's, you know, starting to travel a little bit. And when you read her firsthand account of what she's experienced, you go, oh shit, this shit is real. I mean, I don't know what else to say.
That was
You know,
kind of,
where we don't see it, because here we are in Texas, so far away from these living examples. But imagine what it would have been like when Buddha was alive and people went, wow, I like the results he got. I'm gonna, again, it's about having confidence in the example that you're going to then test their methods because you have confidence that if it worked for them and if I do it correctly and sincerely and repeatedly and consistently, they say I'll get the same results.
yeah. We can even look at our own.
I would like to add something I had heard on a podcast about science and Buddhism, that apparently Carl Sagan met with the Dalai Lama and presented to him, if I could devise an experiment that would without any doubt prove that there is no reincarnation, what would you do? And the Dalai Lama says, well, I guess I would have to believe that. Let's get to work and design the experiment. And, I mean, that should have been the scientist's response. You can test all of this stuff out if it can be tested. And if not, there's still an element of faith in science, but you can test it over and over till you prove it wrong if you have enough doubt, if it's wrong. And, we know lots of science that's been overturned over the centuries. And you just take it with what we have now as kind of the best knowledge that we have now that we can base a decision on, and the rest has to be faith.
Another word that we could perhaps use that might be more helpful to some of us is hypothesis.
Yeah.
Think of what the Buddha is presenting to us in terms of karma as a hypothesis. And we can't just say, no, I don't believe it. We have to try it out to see. Just like any good scientist would. That's a good point, Anne. The only way that's what science is. It's a series of hypotheses and testing them and seeing whether they work or don't work. So science is constantly adjusting. So we as the Buddhist scientists in baby Buddhist scientists, we need to try this stuff out that the Buddha is talking about, and not just go, no, I just don't believe it, so I'm not going to try it. That doesn't make sense. That's not logical, especially when you look at the logic of some of the other Buddhist teachings. So I know it can be a initial hurdle, but there's no harm in trying what the Buddha is saying. Okay, so here's stanza 6. One who does not neglect the practices through desire, hatred, fear, or bewilderment is known as one of faith, a superior vessel for definite goodness. So the commentary is saying a superior vessel for achieving liberation and enlightenment is a person with faith who has confidence in the law of karma and its effects. And because of that confidence, doesn't neglect the practice of virtue. In other words, it would make no sense to not practice virtue simply because I don't believe what the Buddha is saying. That's not good science, actually. That's not following through with the Buddhist hypothesis. If you're seeing it as a hypothesis, you have to try it out. So a superior vessel for this is one who will go, let me try this out. So far I can see a lot of the things that the Buddha is teaching they make sense to me, they're logical. So let me try this out and see for myself. I'm not taking Buddha's word for it. I'm trying it out and seeing for myself, And I like the word confidence a lot. Faith has, it's like a trigger word almost from previous religions that we may have had experience with. And it feels like blind faith is what it's saying. And we're not talking about blind faith. We're not talking about blind faith. It's more like having sort of faith in what a particular scientist has been doing, like the Buddha said. And so you have some confidence that what he's suggesting, or the scientist is suggesting, the hypothesis may be so, let's give it a shot and see. That's a better attitude. This is the attitude that is saying that a superior vessel for the Dharma needs to have this kind of attitude. So they're saying that that kind of person is the best kind of person to be led on the path to liberation by a spiritual mentor, because they refrain from engaging in non-virtuous actions motivated by the four afflictive emotions, the way Nagarjuna said, desire, hatred, fear, or bewilderment. And we could say, also you could say attachment, anger, fear, and ignorance. Attachment, anger, fear, and ignorance. If we allow ourselves to just be driven by our attachment, anger, fear, and ignorance, we're not actually being a superior vessel for this particular path. We're not saying, I'm really going to test out what the Buddha is suggesting here and try it. Rather, what we're saying is, no, well, it sounds good. I like some of the things about the Buddha, but I'm going to keep following my attachment. I'm going to keep following my anger. I'm going to keep following my ignorant confusion about things. And certainly I'm going to pay attention to my fear a lot. So this is the kind of person they're saying it won't work. You have to have some kind of confidence in what the Buddha is saying. So here's some examples of, you just take one negative action. Let's take killing, and we'll go through killing in terms of attachment, in terms of anger, in terms of fear, and in terms of ignorance. So one can kill out of attachment. So take a hunter who loves killing, loves the thrill of hunting and killing. I know people like this. It's like they're excited, they're thrilled, they're I know a family who they are hunters. They wonderful, really salt of the earth, really great people. They sent a Christmas card one year, and it was all the family, the whole family, the parents, the two little kids, and a dead deer that they had killed, antlers, and there was a bloody nose. So it was like, you know, a Christmas Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. They saw that action as being just this wonderful thing, wonderful, wholesome thing. That's due to the attachment to killing. And hunters can have this. Fishermen, hunters, they think it's such a fisherman thinks it's such a relaxing, pleasant, harmonious, beautiful thing to be out there in the water, you know, in your, you know, what are those big long things that you wear in your pants? Waders, and, you know, out there fishing. It's so meditative. Well, on the other end of the pole, on the hook, there's a living being who is getting killed and struggling and doesn't want to die. And the hunter, the fisherman's not seeing that at all. This is what our attachment will do. All right, let's take, obviously, through anger. We know there are many, many examples where people kill out of anger. Animals kill out of anger sometimes. So that's very clear and evident to us. What's the other one? Fear. Here's a good one. A lot of times people who might not actually be inclined to kill will kill out of fear that some authority is saying they must kill. They have to kill. So say, for instance, many people who go into the military, and they go in with very mixed motives. Some of them are very good motives. Some of them actually go into the military, say after 9/11 occurred, and people really felt, I have to go into the military. We have to protect the country from the terrorists and the weapons of mass destruction that are in Iraq and all of that. I'm going to do this for my country. That is a motive. It's in its own way, it's a virtuous motive to protect. The problem is what they're doing is they're being told that they have to kill others in order to do this. And this creates a terrible dichotomy in the mind. And so you have all of these soldiers, men and women, coming back from these experiences of combat with terrible PTSD. And and they're doing this because an authority told them this is what they need to do. And out of fear of not doing that,
Well, wouldn't the fear be more immediate, like once they get into the battlefield, someone's trying to kill them, so they have to kill or be killed? That's the fear.
Here's another one. Say you work for the mafia and they're telling you you have to kill this person. Well, you feel like if I don't kill this person, they're gonna kill me. So yes, it's fear. It's fear. It's all of it is
But it
fear.
could also be more, benign fear, like, a wild boar is running right towards you and is, or a pack of pit bulls.
Right. There are many, many, many examples. I'm just giving one that could relate as humans who aren't, just bloodthirsty killers all the time. Okay, and then the other one out of ignorance. Let me see what the commentary said on this one, because I don't remember. Oh, yeah, I know I didn't remember. It's like I blocked it out. This kind of ritualistic killing that goes on. And even now, this can happen among humans, human to human. This idea, if you're in some kind of culty kind of thinking, where the ritualistic sacrifice of another being, it could be an animal, it could even be a human, you believe that this ritualistic killing is going to be some kind of benefit to you, whatever that benefit may be. This goes on, it's going on even today. That's killing out of ignorance. That's killing out of complete bewilderment and confusion about the way things actually exist and the nature of reality. That is complete confusion killing. And it's pretty bad. It's pretty negative. It's bad karma there. So that's just one example, but you could take it with every negative, what's called a negative action. You could take it through all of these, we're doing this negative action out of ignorance or fear or desire or attachment, ignorance, fear. What was the other one?
Attachment, anger.
Anger, yeah.
Ignorance.
Yeah. Okay, so we go now to the seventh, and this was the last stanza of the last part. Having analyzed well all deeds of body, speech, and mind, those who realize what benefit self and others and always perform these are wise. So they're saying that a wise person will continually examine their physical and verbal actions to determine whether those actions are virtuous, non-virtuous, or neutral. And a wise person will make an effort to abandon the non-virtuous actions and the neutral, even the neutral activities, and engage in the virtuous actions. They enthusiastically will develop their bodhicitta, their wish to become enlightened for the benefit of all sentient beings. It's this the intention of this awakened heart and mind, that wants to be of benefit to all sentient beings, and so go all the way to enlightenment for that. And they will dedicate all their virtuous actions for this purpose. And this is what we do in our dedication prayers in these classes. So if a wise person by doing that will benefit both themselves and others at the same time. And a person who knows what to abandon and what to practice on the path and does that with a bodhicitta intention and motivation is a wise person who is capable of engaging all the way in the path to liberation and enlightenment. Someone who doesn't have faith in karma and its effects, and doesn't know what to practice or what not to practice, and what to abandon practicing, that's somebody who doesn't have wisdom. And what the commentator is saying here is they are not suitable to be led to liberation and enlightenment at this time. Generally speaking, all sentient beings can be led to what they call the definite goodness of liberation and enlightenment, but it requires these conditions that we've been talking about. The faith in the karma, getting a higher rebirth, doing the practices, developing the bodhicitta and this intention to become enlightened. These are all the things that will lead to that. If somebody doesn't have that inclination and is not interested in that at all, then they're not a suitable vessel at this time. Okay. So according to the Mahayana view, a suitable vessel, a person who could go all the way here, is you're taking this view of the three scopes of practice in the Mahayana view. And Mahayana means the great vehicle, meaning it's going to take you all the way to liberation and enlightenment. So I've said before, in the first scope, a wise person is somebody who knows, I need to get a better rebirth. The purpose of my existence right now is to make sure I get a better rebirth within cyclic existence so I can continue on this great path. So that's where the karma comes in. That's where the hypothesis and trying it out and testing out what the Buddha says comes in. Do these practices. This is going to get you to the next scope. The next scope of the practice is you are generating all the causes to become liberated, completely liberated from cyclic existence. And this is where the wisdom teachings come in, because liberation from cyclic existence is not going to occur without a direct realization, a direct non-conceptual realization of emptiness itself, the nature of existence, the nature of the self, the nature of phenomena. So that's going to require that view. The third scope of the path is the one which takes this all the way to enlightenment. It's the highest scope of the path, where the purpose of all of your practices is to attain enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. And this bodhicitta is something that we should be developing now, so that it continues and holds us through all the way to enlightenment. Because enlightenment is the whole purpose, and the whole reason and the motivation for enlightenment is to be of benefit to all other sentient beings who we are interdependently connected with. So a wise person is a person who sees those three scopes and knows where to practice and what to be practicing in those scopes. Now this is where Nagarjuna goes into the second part of his first chapter, where he talks about the actual practices. And the first practices that he gives are engaging in virtuous actions and avoiding non-virtuous actions. But before we get to that first set of practices that Nagarjuna gives us, I want to discuss the use of mantras more in our spiritual practice. In Mahayana Buddhism, the chanting of mantras combined with visualizations are considered to be a powerfully effective meditational practice. According to the Mahayana Sutra called Manjushri Mulakalpa, mantras are manifestations of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, which they represent. These mantras are representing those Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. When we recite a mantra with pure intention, our consciousness energetically connects with the mantra, and therefore what we're doing is we're making a connection with the energy and the meditative power of the Buddha or the Bodhisattva that is associated with that mantra. There are 4 mantras and their corresponding images that we're going to be using as part of our study and practice in relation to this text. And we've discussed this before. They're the Shakyamuni Buddha mantra and the Shakyamuni Buddha, the image, the Chenrezig mantra, which is the Buddha of compassion, and the Chenrezig image, the Manjushri mantra was the Buddha of wisdom and the Manjushri image, and the Vajrasattva mantra, Vajrasattva is considered to be a 10th level bodhisattva. 10th level is, they're on these bhumis, it's the highest 10th level before you actually become enlightened. And so there's the Vajrasattva mantra and then the Vajrasattva image. When we're doing these visualizations and we're reciting these mantras, it's essential, really, to have a correct understanding of emptiness in order to be successful in this practice. We have to avoid the conclusion that the view of emptiness means that nothing exists, which promotes the view of nihilism. If somebody thinks that emptiness means, oh, nothing exists, there's no inherent existence, it means nothing exists. That means that we will disregard actually the laws of karma. We'll think, well, if nobody knows about it and doesn't find out about it, I can get by with it. It's not going to matter. I mean, nobody sees it. I'll get away with it. What this leads to eventually is this view that actually nothing matters. Nothing actually matters. And that then leads to this abyss of nihilism, a nihilistic view. So it's very, very important that we understand that that's not what emptiness is talking about. We also have to let go of the idea that because all phenomena are completely empty of having any kind of independent self-existence, that it means that there can be no beneficial consequences from virtuous actions and no detrimental consequences from non-virtuous actions. If we think that something lacks independent self-existence, and we think somehow that means, again, like I said, we can do whatever we want, and there won't actually be, positive effects coming from virtuous karma or negative effects coming from negative karma, we will have made a big mistake. So if we can avoid coming to those kinds of conclusions, then our practice with these mantras and visualizations will be successful. If something has emptiness as its ultimate nature, it means that it is capable of functioning in various ways because it is empty of having any independent self-existence. If something truly had an independent existence unto itself, it would be incapable of performing any function because it would be unable to connect or interact with anything. We should understand that the fact that phenomena have emptiness as their ultimate nature is the very quality that makes interaction possible. It makes their interaction possible, that because they have no independent self-existence. That's the very quality that allows that interaction to occur, and it's actually necessary for them to be able to enter into action and perform any number of actions. So nothing, as we've talked about before, has any kind of independent self-existence. If it did, it could not function. It could not interact. It would be existent unto itself, not depending on anything. Once it interacts, it means it is having a dependent relationship with something else. It's interacting. So this is a really important thing to understand when we go into these mantras and these visualizations, that all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are empty of any kind of inherent independent self-existence. They have relied upon many, many causes and conditions to attain liberation and to attain enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. One of those causes is a reliance on sentient beings. There is no way one could develop the generosity, the patience, the discipline without sentient beings to rely on, to work with, to interact with, to develop those qualities. You cannot develop those qualities in a vacuum. So the Bodhisattvas and the Buddhas are empty of any kind of independent self-existence. That's really important to remember. And they continue to benefit sentient beings because they are capable of functioning and interacting with them. So these Buddhas, these Bodhisattvas, are capable of functioning and interacting with us. And we are capable of functioning and interacting with them because we all lack independent self-existence. So that's why we're able to receive the benefit
Yeah.
from them.
Because of emptiness.
Because of emptiness. It's like, if we don't get this in our heads, what we're going to think is that when I'm visualizing this thing and saying this mantra, that this mantra like actually exists as this thing that, and if I say these words themselves have some independent self-existence that's going to make something happen, like it's magic, right? We have to avoid the magical thinking, or we think this visualization is this Buddha that exists out there really from its own side, independent, and that Buddha is going to be able to just make something happen to me. That's not what we're talking about. That's again, wrong, mistaken thinking. We have to understand that there is an interaction and a relationship going on because of the emptiness of independent self-existence. So we have to put aside our old paradigms of blind faith and magical thinking in order for these mantras and visualizations to be successful for us. A more apt analogy that I think is for this process is that of a professional coach and a capable trainee. And the coach works very closely with the trainee. And the trainee eventually learns from the coach. The coach can actually, a physical coach can get quite intimate with you to show you what it is you need to do, the practices you need to do to become strong and fit. And they'll work in a very intimate way with you. And you have to make they can't do it for you. You have to be the one who then makes the effort, given their training, to achieve the goal you're looking for. Another analogy that I think is very apt is that of a medical doctor and a very capable patient, I guess I would say. So that the medical doctor knows the kind of therapy and medicine and things to give to that particular patient, and the patient themselves is using their intelligence, is making a decision whether this doctor is a doctor I can trust, and if I can trust this, they check around. Actually, they check around. A very capable patient is not just going to go to any old doctor with blind faith and take whatever the doctor says and think that that's going to help them. A very capable patient is going to check the doctor out, is going to look at the logic behind it, do their own research on this, and then the doctor can help them with the medicine, and they can take that medicine or whatever therapy it may be. And that's another way of looking at when we're doing these mantras and the visualizations, is those kinds of relationships, a trainee and the trainer, or the doctor and the one who is working to become well. That's the way to think of it. So that it's a relationship. Finally, when we visualize the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas who are associated with these particular mantras, we should mentally imagine that their form is not physical and coarse, but is in the aspect of powerful and beneficial light energy, clean and clear, similar to the transparent light of a rainbow, but very brilliant in color and strength. And we feel that light energy is connecting and interacting with our own light energy, which consists of a system of channels and multiple energy centers through which what the Indians call a universal life force called prana, or the Tibetans call energetic winds, that flow in, out, and throughout our entire body, through all of these channels and these energy centers. So when we're visualizing in the space in front of us, say the Buddha, we're visualizing an energetic being that is connecting energetically with our energetic being, our energy body, our winds, our channels, our chakras, that are intimately connected with our physical body. So these mantras back and forth, again, the mantras are energy. And we have to understand what it is we are saying it's not just a magical incantation. We have to understand what's going on, what the symbolism, what's behind the form of the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas, what's the meaning of the mantra, and how that affects us. We have to use all of our reasoning, our logic, and this kind of faith that we've been talking about, this kind of confidence in the Buddha and the Buddha's teachings and the enlightened beings.
I mean, and they also say the very sounds themselves align with the energy of those sounds align with the energy of that entity.
Of the entity, and that energy then
Or
is.
align, you know.
So
by,
when you're
by generating that sound, you are basically tuning your radio dial into.
perfect, it's like, so say our energetic system can be tuned. It can be tuned to a particular frequency, and this is what we're doing when we're visualizing these Buddhas, Bodhisattvas in the space in front of us, saying the mantras that are associated with them. Understand the qualities that we are developing, that we're in training for with them, and that the mantras themselves sort of tune our energetic system to those qualities.
And if you have any doubt that your energy systems can be tuned, just see how you react when someone says, I love you. You know, I mean.
Or how you react when someone says,
Well,
you asshole.
Right, I'm just saying, know that this, we have many examples
Right.
where you hear a sweet song, and so forth, anyway.
Well,
All right, questions, because it's important that we
Yeah, go ahead.
have the right understanding of this if we're going to be engaging in these mantras and visualizations.
No, I was just thinking that, the practice is to sit on the bank of the river and watch all of these events go by without any real attachment or any real.
Oh, in a meditation practice, yeah.
Yeah. And it's the same thing when somebody says, I love you or I hate you or whatever, you just gotta say that's a statement, and that you don't get attached to it, to react to it in one way or the other.
Well, these examples are always never perfect.
Yeah,
I was using it as an example
Yeah, the
of
thing-
how sound can shift your energy.
right. You're right. I mean, in a regular old human to human relationship, I love you could be deceptive. It could not be completely clear and clean.
Okay, I'm sorry, I used that.
But when we're talking about enlightened beings whose whole purpose is to benefit sentient beings, other sentient beings, and have achieved liberation and have achieved enlightenment, it goes back to this idea of having the confidence in karma. We don't understand it; it's more obscure to us. But if you have confidence in the other teachings of the Buddha, and then you can have confidence that this is not about any kind of deception at all. It is clean, it is clear, and it is designed actually for our benefit. But we have to come to it with the right state of mind, not like, oh, blind faith, oh, Buddha, 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 you're going to save me. And if I recite these words, it's like a magical incantation and it's going to work. That is the completely wrong view. And is that clear?
Yeah.
Christopher, do you have to say it aloud, or can you just think it or mumble it?
You can think it, but I'll tell you from my own experiences of what has occurred to me over the years with mantras. I don't have to say it like out loud, big out loud. I can think it in my head, but I find that the effect, all I have to do is just whisper it to myself, like, so that nobody would actually necessarily hear it. But the energy that's created by somehow forming it in the breath, whatever energy is there, I have found from my own experience that it's stronger than if I just say it to myself in my head.
So it's not that the hearing sense has to be involved, or I was just wondering for what Kavita said, if you needed the sound in your ears, or can you just create the sound in your head, even.
No, it's funny that I often wonder this too, and I've decided that it's good for my consciousness overall to hear it. I can't explain it any further than that. And I'm not looking, it's not a right answer or wrong answer. I'm just saying, to have a more full experience. The only example I can give a testimony or a report on having watched Geshe Drakpa in many, many occasions saying his mantra, because when he wasn't talking to you, he was saying mantras literally. If you were in the car, if you were at the dinner table, if he was sitting waiting, he was saying mantras, and there was always,
It was under the
there
breath.
was always some, and I think Christopher went back, the Tibetans use the term, the word for wind in Tibetan is lung. And I think if you think about wind, if you are expelling a little wind, surely there's some subtle
There's a frequency. There's some kind of
there's some
frequency.
subtle relationship of the actual subtle amount of air you're letting, the wind literally that you're. But I don't know. All I
Right.
know is what they do. And if you
What works for you is
if you
how
go
you
in the
should
room
be.
of 1,000 monks and they're saying their mantras, they'll all be going.
And so again, and it was just my own experience, because I've experimented with that. Whether if I can just say it in my head, or and I say it, even whispering it under my breath, the whispering under the breath is much more powerful. I actually will begin to feel the energy moving when I do it that
Try
way.
it out yourself.
And the thing is, try it out yourself. And don't think that you're going to feel the energy moving right off the bat either. I mean,
One thing I've experienced is I have a lot of trouble generating any kind of visualization at all. But I do find that if I'm kind of mumbling the mantra, at least I'm not thinking about how bad I am at visualization. It kind of blocks negative thoughts. So that's what I've found so far.
that is a what you just said is something that comes up all the time with people when we're talking about visualizations. And probably a better way to put it is mentally imagining. So if I said something to you like, imagine a dog, you're going to have some kind of mental impression in your mind of a dog. Or imagine a bright light bulb. You're going to have a mental impression of a bright light bulb in your mind. It's like your mind's eye. It's not like you're actually seeing that the way we see with our eyes. It's not that way. So to start out with, just think of it that way, that you have a mental image, a mental imagination of what it is in the space in front of you. And this is why the images are so helpful, because the images, we can look at these images, we can study these images, we can study the colors, we can study the meaning, that's the symbolism that's in the images. And the more familiar we get with, looking at the images and studying the images and what everything means, the more our mental image, that when we, just sort of close our eyes and have a mental image of them in the space in front of us, the more we're going to feel what that is about, feel what that means. It's not like we're going to actually see it, but we will begin to, in my experience, feel a connection with the being, with the energy of that being, and connection back and forth between, so an interaction of energy is what I would say is what will come about. And this is why the mantras can be quite powerful. You could even have we could spend an hour in the morning just doing these mantras and going through the practices, and one will develop one's love, one's compassion, one's understanding, and one's wisdom through just the mantras alone, if we understand the relationship, if we understand what the mantras are about and what they're sort of opening us up to. You will develop meditative concentration doing this. It is the mantras are a wonderful practice. And if you don't have any other practice than this right now, you could do this. I mean, Geshe Nima told us, practice 1 hour every morning. If you don't have any other practice right now that you are very familiar with and working on, you can do these for 1 hour in the morning, and it's going to, these four, when we actually cover all four of them, and it will be a very thorough practice that is going to get you solidly on the road. If you hold the view of emptiness, that the mantra itself is not a magical formula, that just by saying it's going to cause something to happen, and that the mental image, what you're visualizing or thinking about out there, is not some independently self-existent deity that can make it happen for you. That's the wrong view. That's a mistaken view. That won't work.
I'm gonna post a link. I had found something that Alexander Berzin wrote about visualization that I personally found helpful, so I'll post a link to his article on visualization for anybody.
Great, thank you.
I mean, I found it quite helpful. And so others might too. Somebody else might. Here it comes in the chat.
So we're not going to get too far with this because of our time here, which is fine, because all of this,
What do you want
this
up?
discussion is great. You can put Shakyamuni Buddha up, but we're not going to get very far. And we will continue next time, because there's no point in, the whole reason I want to go over these mantras is that when we get to the next section that Nagarjuna talks about, which is the virtuous actions, the non-virtuous actions, and the karma, and the practices there, the Vajrasattva mantra is going to be very beneficial for us in purifying our negative karma. So, but I want to get to all of these mantras.
You want the mantra or the?
I want the picture of Shakyamuni Buddha right now.
Can you, let me just ask, since I'm not on Zoom, obviously, and I'm not gonna get that reference you just.
I'll email it to you.
Yeah, or just put it in the weekly note that you send
You mean
out.
the link to that?
Yeah,
That's in every email that goes out.
No, he's saying
No.
this article I just sent.
Oh, the article, sorry,
yeah,
sorry.
the visualization thing that you were just talking about.
Alexander Berzin, yeah. He's very good.
This is, you know, for what it's worth, this is a big problem for me as well, and. You know,
I don't see them out there.
I don't know what to say.
Well, I
It's-
don't think it's a problem. That's the wrong way to think about it. Everybody's mind is very active and changing from second to second to second. And the goal is to not hound yourself that you can't keep your eyes or something focused. You just come back to it,
Mhm.
and over time you'll come back to it and you'll leave it less often. So I don't think it's a problem. It's
I
just-
had the impression I was supposed to see when I see like as it, like in a movie, like I'd see projected in my mind.
Everybody
like, or
says that,
dream,
yeah.
This very clear, right, you know.
Everybody,
detail.
everybody thinks
That's
that.
what I mean by,
Yeah.
yeah, so that's.
Who knows?
You know,
I mean, eventually maybe some clairvoyance kicks in and you actually do see.
So
but-
really only recently
Yeah.
I came upon this Alexander Berzin, been the last maybe 3-4 months.
So let's just, in the last 5-4 minutes we have here, let's start to look at the Shakyamuni Buddha. What it is we're going to be imagining. Let's say imagining in the space in front of us. So that we don't get hung up on the visualizing, but just imagining. The first thing to notice is the expression on the Buddha's face, which is loving and kind, wise, compassionate, and spiritually powerful, all at the same time. So notice that look on the face, expression. He is seated with his legs and feet in what's called the lotus position, with his right hand touching the ground and his left hand resting in his lap, holding a bowl of white nectar. You have Chenrezig up. We need Shakyamuni back. Yeah, thanks. I'll say that again. He is seated with his legs and feet in the lotus position, with his right hand touching the ground and his left hand resting in his lap, holding a bowl of white nectar. This posture is known as the earth-touching mudra, and it represents the moment when the Buddha called upon the earth to witness his enlightenment and the complete eradication of all his afflictive and cognitive obscurations to omniscience. The lotus position itself, the position that his legs are in, itself symbolizes the infinite purity of the Buddhist path with its perfect balance of wisdom and compassion. If you look very closely, Kavita, could you zoom in on his feet? Could you get a close-up of the bottom of the Buddha's feet, as close as you can get?
That's as close as I get.
If you look at the bottom of each of the Buddha's feet, you'll see the impression of an eight-spoked Dharma wheel. Yeah.
I mean, I might be,
Yeah.
I'm almost afraid. There you go.
There, you'll see the impression of an eight-spoked Dharma wheel. They also say that it's on the back of his hands, but in this picture, well, actually, you can see just underneath the bowl that he's holding on the palm of his hand there is also the impression of the eight-spoked Dharma wheel. This represents not only the eightfold noble path of virtue, which the Buddha gave in his teachings, but it represents all of the paths, the Mahayana path. It represents the path of the hearer, the path of the solitary realizer, and the full path that goes all the way to enlightenment that we've talked about with the 5 paths or the 10 paths of a bodhisattva and the 10 grounds that we go on. All of this is representing the path that the Buddha walked, you could say, to enlightenment, to liberation and enlightenment. And this is the path that we can walk as well. And with his feet and his legs in this harmonious lotus position, it's the balance of the two aspects of the path, of all the paths. The two aspects are compassion and wisdom. Or you could say compassion that will say method, the methods that you use, the methods, and the wisdom, which is always has to do with an understanding of emptiness, the nature of reality. So his feet, the paths there, the two aspects of the paths are in perfect balance. All of this is, you can go over this again and again. This will be in the study guide. You will the links to these high resolution images are there. So you can study this you could do this in the morning. You could study, become very familiar with all of the meanings of the Buddha image. I think we're probably going to have to stop there. Yeah, it's just about well, I'll just go on just a little more. His body is golden in color, and he wears saffron-colored robes, both of which symbolize the emergence of great spiritual awakening in a world that is obscured by distraction. And isn't that the truth? A world obscured by distraction. He has a cranial protuberance. It's known as an Ushnisha, and this represents the supreme Buddha consciousness. The color of the Buddha's Ushnisha and hair are both a deep indigo color. And this symbolizes the vast wisdom and spiritual insight of an enlightened being. If you look in between his two eyebrows, he has a small, very tightly wound spiral of white hair between the eyebrows. This is known as an urna, and this symbolizes supreme vision, which sees the truth of all things. If you notice, it's located where they say we have this third eye. And you'll see in a lot of the Buddhist iconography, you'll see a third eye in some of the images, the deities. His elongated ears, although they're not one of the marks and signs of a Buddha, they serve as a reminder that Shakyamuni Buddha was once a prince who wore heavy earrings which stretched his earlobes. And he gave up the wearing of any jewelry when he gave up his life of privilege and luxury to pursue the path to enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. The begging bowl, and this will be the last thing, the begging bowl that the Buddha is holding represents his simplicity and humility as a monk. And it is a reminder that the Buddha lived a simple life as a monk, free from material possessions. The nectar in the bowl represents the Dharma, which removes all ignorance and delusion. The indigo color of the bowl symbolizes the vastness of the Dharma and the spiritual insights contained in its realizations. Okay, we'll stop there, but the idea is that we are going to go through all four of these mantras, all four of the images, and all four of the mantras themselves and the meanings, and then we were going to practice with those in this idea of the Buddha or the Bodhisattva. They are the trainer, and we're the trainee. And there's an interaction happening between us and between our energies, and we're going to be training that way with each of these mantras and the visualizations or the images or imaginations that go with them. So we'll stop there, and we'll say our closing prayers. Any questions before we go on? Okay. Questions are really good.
I just a general question. How does this relate to Nagarjuna's precious Garland?
Because it relates to the practices, especially the next practice that we get into is to help us with this practice of purifying our karma, which is what the practice, an aspect of that practice is purifying karma. We're going to use the Vajrasattva image and the Vajrasattva mantra, and we're going to have an experience and connect with that energy and the process of purifying karma. So it becomes sort of like this holographic thing that we're doing by studying what Nagarjuna is saying, putting it into actual practice in an energetic way, which will make
I was just trying to draw the. We're in a class called, Nagarjuna's.
Yeah, I mean, it
precious Garland.
supercharges. This is why I talked to Geshe Nima about this, and he said yes, do this, and then he also said do the Shakyamuni Buddha mantra. So Geshe Nima approved of all of this, and
he gave us the
right. He gave us the transmissions. So this is why we're doing it. Yeah.
Well, I have one quick question. Is doing mantras generate the same thing that calm abiding meditation does, or are they? I guess
It can once say you've got developed a very that's like Brian was talking about. We'll see all these images and things and ideas and things passing, and one after another. As we develop a very strong focus, say on the image or the imaginary image of the energy of the Buddha or Bodhisattva we're connecting with, and the meaning and the connection with it, it can be like almost like a single pointed concentration type of experience where you are completely focused on that, especially if you once the mantra is stopped, once you've stopped saying the mantra and you just experience the feeling and the connection and you're holding on to that, right? So it is like a calm, you're calmly abiding in that experience.
In our lineage, when they use the term calm abiding meditation, they're talking about something specific, which is that you can take a object of meditation on and abide with that object without distraction for as long as you wish to. So when you hear in our lineage the discussion about calm abiding, they're referring to the end result of a lot of practice and training to get to the point of being able to abide for as long as you wish to on an object.
And as I said, if we practice these mantras and the visualizations that go with the mantras and the understanding of what it is we're doing, this will develop our calm abiding. This will develop our concentration. It will help. It's a meditative practice, in other words, and it's a powerful one. And yeah, so that answers the question. Then yes, it will help in that. It will help in that.
Well, there is this meditative practice where you I think it's called Ganthna or something like that, where you actually say a mantra as part of the meditative practice itself. So you breathe in and you say, good in, breathe out, bad out. I mean, you kind of, but you could use any mantra associated with the meditative practice to focus your attention. So it's actually a type of Buddhist meditative practice.
It creates a particular focus, and like I said, when you're through with the mantra, when you're through the recitations of the mantra, you can just abide in that sort of single pointed focus of what's been going on, which is a very, very positive and beneficial practice. Yeah. Okay. Our closing prayers. We can do all of them today in Tibetan. So we'll do the two bottom dedication prayers on the bottom of the second page and the final dedication prayer on the bottom of page 3. Jangchu Senchok Rinpoche Ma Kye Panam Kye Gyuchi Kye Panyampa Me Payam Gong De Gong Pelwar Shotong Yetawa Rinpoche Ma Kye Panam Kye Gyurchi Kye Panyampa Me Payam Gong Ne Gong Du Pelwar Shotong Yewa kundu yang daglam breme chaki padalong chuchin sadang lam ki yonten razogne dorje changi gopang yortokshu. Okay, that's it for today. Great seeing you all. Thank you. And see you next time.
Thank you, Christopher.
Oh, you're so welcome.
Thank you so much. Great class.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Hey, hi, Teresa.
Goodbye, everyone.
I may email you some questions. Bye.
Okay, no problem.
Bye, Arthur. Bye, everyone.